Looks like we probably
Okay.
have enough for a quorum here. We can probably get going.
Okay, I'm going to go through by member agency, and if you could just indicate who you are, if you're representing that agency today, and then if we have more than one representative, we'll decide who the voting member is. Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board,
David Botar.
I believe you have a representative from Syracuse University representing you as well, David.
Mark Jackson.
Yes, Mark is here.
Okay, thank you. Central New York Regional Transportation Authority,
Brian Schultz.
thank you. City of Syracuse Common Council,
Yes, Joe Driscoll here representing the council.
thank you. City of Syracuse Office of the Mayor,
Neil Burke here representing Office of the Mayor.
thank you. Empire State Development, Center State CEO,
Jared Shepard representing Center State CEO.
New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, New York State Department of Transportation,
Hi, Pat. Hi, everybody. David Smith here, representing DOT. Mark Frechette is also on. I will be the voting member.
thank you. New York State Thruway Authority,
Jaren George here, representing Thruway Authority.
thank you. Onondaga County Office of the Executive,
Odine, I believe that's you.
Yep, just having some issues there with the mute button. Yep, Odine Dyer here.
thank you. Onondaga County Legislature, Onondaga County Planning Board, Dan.
Dan
Kozlowski.
Kozlowski.
Yes, okay. The Syracuse
Yep, I'm
Planning
here.
Commission, thanks, Dan. Syracuse Planning Commission,
Hi, Pat. It's Heather. I'm here.
thank you.
Welcome. All right, Brian, we're all set.
All right, great. Thanks everyone for joining this meeting. I'd like to start by calling the meeting to order and asking for a motion, which again, Pat will go through and do a roll call. But I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the December 12th meeting.
Smith, I make a motion.
Thanks, Dave.
I'll second. This is Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board,
Yes.
Central New York Regional Transportation Authority,
Aye.
City of Syracuse Common Council,
Aye, yep.
City of Syracuse Office of the Mayor,
Aye.
Empire State Development, Center State CEO,
Here.
New York State DEC, New York State Department of Transportation,
Aye.
New York State Thruway Authority,
Aye.
Onondaga County Office of the Executive,
Aye.
Onondaga County Legislature, Onondaga County Planning Board,
Yes.
City of Syracuse Planning Commission.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. Minutes are approved. Next, we've got the UPWP status report and agency status report. Jim?
Yes. Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. I know this is a much different way to do these kind of meetings, and it's much more laborious doing a vote this way, and my apologies for that. Doing the best that we can. Just to make sure everybody realizes this meeting is being recorded and you are being live streamed on YouTube, and that live stream will also be archived and available on the internet for public transparency to meet public meeting requirements for remotely held meetings. In terms of UPWP status report, I'm not going to go through everything in detail. I just want to let you know the staff wrapped up the program year March 31st. In your email packet that you received, you had an end of year report. All projects that were projected to be completed during that program year were completed. The new program year began April 1st. We are underway with kicking off our new programs. We're beginning to scope new projects. We've met with some member agencies, including SACPA and some local governments, City of Syracuse, and we're doing some outreach to SU for the dome carrier traffic study. So we have begun some of our initial planning for scoping the new projects. It is a little slower to scope projects remotely than it is when we can get us all together in a room, unfortunately. So the ramp up will take us a little longer this time, and data collection will be more of a challenge. But everything is working fine in terms of the operations of the agency. Everyone is working remotely except for myself. I am here at the office every day. If you have any needs from the SMTC, drop me an email, give me a call. I'll see that your needs are addressed. That's why we're here today. New York State DOT reached out with the TIP amendment request. That's all I have in terms of updates. If you have any questions on the status of any projects, given the way things are operating, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I believe New York State DOT wanted to provide an update after when I was completed on some activities that they're doing relevant to this as well.
Yes, Dave Smith here, Jim. Just wanted to give a quick update on a couple things, just relative to, agency updates. So DOT is certainly part of the response to COVID-19 statewide. We've been assisting many other agencies across the state, certainly, Department of Health and Department of Labor and assisting at test sites and temporary hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. All DOT staff continue to work, whether it's at home or in the office or out on the highway system. So we're keeping things going. Certainly on the construction side, everybody's well aware that construction continues to move forward, certainly on the highway system. And just to touch base on a few things relative to DOT's construction this year. Certainly a large program, approximately 130 plus million on the state side, and then 50 plus million on the local side as well. Some of the specific projects, fairgrounds, everybody's probably aware of the closure last night on 690 for setting steel. That'll continue tonight and for the next few nights to set steel. That's for the fairgrounds access project, the ramp out of the orange lot. So that's going well. It's on schedule. Trail, Erie Boulevard section is under construction. If you've been on Erie Boulevard, you've seen that. That's well underway, as well as the new pedestrian bridge as part of the Empire State Trail that's being installed over 481. Those projects are on schedule and will be completed the end of this year. On the paving side, a couple projects of note. One is 81 north of Route 31 from Cicero to Central Square. That'll be taking place this summer. And Route 5 and 92 from DeWitt to Manlius will get started. That's a paving project as well. It'll get started in May. So I just wanted to touch base on those. And then I wanted to turn it over to Mark to talk about the 81 project.
Thanks, Dave. Jim, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So 2019 for 81 was a step. We had released the preliminary EIS in the springtime. We came out with our recommended grid as our preferred alternative. We continue to carry the no build and the viaduct replacement as also viable alternatives, as well as community grid. It was a good year from the perspective of dismissing of the tunnel solutions and really engaging the public on some new concepts like the Business Loop 81 concept, the elimination of the missing links. Most of 2019, many of the people who were on the phone participated in the public engagement, and it really started June 18th, 2019, when we held the open house and had around 1,000 people attend that. And I would say that it was very educational for the public because we had provided quite a bit of information, but also very educational for the I-81 project team. We always learn a lot from the public in the engagement. So we followed that up with 11 neighborhood meetings, going to some new places that we hadn't been before, out to Lafayette, where we had over 150 people attend that, to Camillus, did some different meetings in the city, held 4 noise meetings, and multiple stakeholder meetings. Many of the people who were on the phone, we met with your organizations, the county, Center State, the Regional Planning and Development Board, CLU, SMTC, and it all resulted in over 1,000 comments that were received on the project. And I'm a firm believer that good public outreach really leads to positive changes in our alternative to be implemented. This has been seen in the past with, as I mentioned, Business Loop 81, enhancements to pedestrian, bicycle, transit accommodations. But ultimately, our goal through public outreach is to make the alternatives better, and to make the alternatives better before we get to the construction phases. So we continue to try and refine the alternatives, the 3 that are remaining, mainly the viaduct and the community grid. So what did we hear? We heard lots from the public. One of the big topics that always comes up when we meet with the public is jobs. It's probably one of the biggest discussions that people want to talk to us about. And it's unfortunate we had city and state and many of the people on the phone were about to participate in the jobs table meeting that occurred the same week that pretty much everybody went home. And so jobs is going to be a big thing going forward. Other things that came out of some of the public outreach, and I'm just hitting some of the highlights, economic analysis. There was some concern that the community grid changing to travel patterns would have impacts to some of the businesses. We're requested to do additional economic analysis. So that was one thing. People were very interested in talking about the exit 3 along Interstate 481, the flow of traffic from Route 5 to 481 and conversely. Right away was a big thing we talked about last year. We released documentation that showed all properties that are being impacted, for the Department of Transportation to have a conversation at the individual level with businesses about ingress into their businesses, or talk to people about strip takings that we need to have out front of somebody's personal home. So those were some new things that we got into in 2019 and as we started 2020. Other topics: noise, air quality, protecting historical significance. Wilson Park always comes up, and the benefits that we're to Wilson Park. Environmental justice and protecting the environmental justice community. And then finally, construction implementation. We were able to get into talking more specifics about the implementation of construction. So as we go into 2020, and we're already heading towards May. I think some of the signs for the COVID-19 are very optimistic for Central New York, and there's been a lot of conversation about unpausing the process and doing that in a way that will be healthy. It's, I think, our first steps back to some of the normalcy. For the project, the next big public steps going forward will be to release the document and have a public federal aid hearing. And there are strict timeframes associated with that. They have to go out at the same time. So we are looking forward to that engagement when we get to that stage. And we look forward to further engagement. So I think, Jim, that's pretty much my update for the 81, unless somebody has any questions for me.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions for Mark on his update?
Yeah, I have a load of questions. I'd reached out to Scott to perhaps set up a separate committee meeting with the council. So I'll try not to. I don't know what policy is, Jim. If I overstep my time limit, just clip me whenever and let me know that I should stop asking questions. But I guess my first big one, Mark, is what. So we're all kind of in a holding pattern. Is that my understanding with 81 as well? Like, I'd imagine that you can't go forward with your final statement on the environmental impact study until you can have more public meetings, and you wouldn't want to release it when you can't have public meetings. Is that the consideration right now, that you can't really move forward with environmental impact study finalization until we can engage with the public in a physical sense again?
Yeah, so Joe, the great question. And Scott had talked to me, and I think he even may have had a date for the city council. I know we talked about, and then we kind of hit the pause button because we couldn't get together. So, that stakeholder engagement is extremely important, and we want to do that. And I want to do that with city council. So to answer your question, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen next month in June and July and so forth. But recognizing that the release of the DEIS does have a time period by which we have to have the public hearing. And I think it's 45 days, 60 days, something like that. We need to set those up. So I think we need to get by this COVID-19. Not sure what that means for us over the summertime or going into the fall. Rest assured, as soon as the department can get together with city council, can start engaging the public again, we want to do that.
Yeah, well, I'll send out a follow-up. I know, like, as this thing hit, I think a lot of plans went off the rails, but I'll follow up and engage in that city conversation again. I guess my thoughts, maybe I'll save all this for when we. I don't know what protocol is for asking questions, but my thought is that the military is planning through 2021 to figure out a life adapted with COVID rather than, I don't think we can pause for a year and a half. So the military is trying to figure out ways to adapt with the reality of COVID being a continual presence. So I guess just, my wife being a biology professor and hearing from a lot of the science friends that I have, I think that's probably the smart path moving forward, to figure out how we plan without, in spite of New York on pause. I don't know what that looks like. I'm just saying from my perspective, I guess my concern is that I would hate to see this held up another year and a half, but I don't know how we get around that without being able to have physical public engagement. But just some of my thoughts. I guess I'll let it go. My other question was what exactly does having the grid as the preferred choice mean at this stage? It seems like in the way you're framing it, that viaduct is still a very viable consideration that you guys are meeting out. Is that accurate?
Joe, I
Yeah,
think
so
sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Joe, first on the city council, I think we could probably do a Zoom call because it's not
Yeah.
been an amount of people. You know, related to public hearings, I will say that we have had some conversation with our federal partners in discussing this, because this isn't just a problem for New York, it's a problem for across the country, and how you engage it. And so I think more information's flowing in on that, more to come on that,
Right.
more to come on that side of things. So we just got to figure that out.
Okay.
And Joe, I think in answer to the other part of your question, I think until there's a draft environmental impact statement that's officially out, the other options do have to stay on the table until that comes out. I think that's why that's mentioned in terms of that. Right now, that doesn't exist until that is actually released.
Yeah, that's true, Jim, and they have to be evaluated equally. That's why the viaduct is considered a viable alternative. It met all of our screening criteria. But what DOT has recommended back in 2019 was the community grid was our preferred alternative, and was taking comments on that.
So is there any, last question, Mark, sorry, Jim, then I'll let it go. Is there any, we will absolutely state what the environmental impact statement is, what the final decision is regarding choice. Is there a hard date that you guys are working with, like by the end of 2020, by the beginning of 2021? Is there like an absolute sell by date that you guys are aiming for or predictive of, that you know you're going to say this is the preferred choice, this is the environmental impact study? Is there a best by date that you are, hoping to have it ready for the public by?
So Joe, the way I would answer that is we want to move forward with the project when it's safe to move forward in that engagement. So really more to come as we learn more over the summertime with this. I don't think any of us expected to be where we are today. We got to manage that forward smartly though. And this is a big priority for the department. This is something that transportation wise, it's something big for Central New York too. So we want to get it right. We want the right solution, and we want to work with the community to get the right solution.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I'll follow up with you as we get a council meeting organized.
Thank you very much, Mark. Before I turn it back over to Brian, I just want to say that you'll notice that it is a shorter agenda today. We only have really one main item, and that is a tip amendment that is coming up. We have 5 completed projects to present to the Planning and Policy Committee. We won't be doing that until our next meeting, just because we thought this was our first meeting, and being held in a remote circumstances, we wanted to keep the agenda small and tight to see how it all worked out and learn from it. And the next time we get together, there will be probably at least 5 projects for presentation, plus any other member agency agenda items that I present. Brian, back to you.
All right, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Mark and Dave, too. That was a lot of good information. We don't have any other old business that got added to the agenda. New business, tip amendment.
Yeah, so we have one tip amendment today. It is from New York State DOT. It is relevant to the I-81 project. I'm going to let Mark go over it in detail, but in summary, basically what it is we're adding additional monies to the project that's currently on the books for 1920, the current fiscal year, and 2021, the next fiscal year. Mark, do you want to detail exactly what that money's going to and where that money's coming from?
Sure. So probably the most important thing related to this tip adjustment that we're making today is that we're adding design funding to the I-81 project from the statewide funding, not from the sub-allocations that get given to Central New York. So just a little background information as to what's happened in the last year related to the tip. SMTC developed a 4-year tip. The timeframes are from October 1st of 2019 through September 30th of 2023. And DOT, City of Syracuse, the county, the Thruway, Centro, And many of the suburbs, Cicero, Fayetteville, competed for projects. And so we just completed that last year. SMTC rolled that into their tip. In Central New York, we put together 2 other tips, one in Tompkins County in the MPO down there at ITCTC, and then the 4 other counties in Central New York that are not covered by SMTC or ITCTC. Those tips got rolled up into Rochester's tip, Buffalo's tips, Long Island's, Albany's. And it's rolled up into what's called a STIP, Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. And this includes all of the federal funding, not just highway, it's got safety, transit, ped bike, and it also includes all of the phases, scoping, design, real estate, construction. And the STIP needs to be fiscally constrained by fund and by year. And this is the yearly commitment that federal government has with every state in the nation. And so we will need to come back to the policy committee for future funding on the I-81 project, for construction funding, construction inspection, real estate acquisition funds, potentially final design funds. But it's important that you realize that the I-81 viaduct project has really not competed on the same platforms as the majority of projects that we talk about at SMTC. DOT projects like Dave just mentioned, 81, our paving project north of Route 31, or the county's Loop to Lake project, or the city's Salina State Street project, or Creek Walk type project. 81, due to the magnitude of the need and the funding, really falls into a category that DOT calls statewide significant. And so there's not sufficient funding that gets put to Central New York. If you look at the construction phases, we're talking about $1.9 billion for construction. And the tip allocation to Central New York would not, it would take multiple tips to ever fund that. So, and if we had to fund it out of the sub allocations, we wouldn't be able to do any other project. So if you look at the tip amendment that's in front of you, the tip adjustment, it shows the money back to the planning study that was done. This was SMTC and DOT partnered in the corridor study that led to the project. And then in 2013, Commissioner Joan McDonald came to SMTC and added the funding that is showing in 13-14 and then 14-15. And so today's tip adjustment will add funding to the next 2 years for the I-81 project that will provide the necessary design funds to carry us through to the design approval. And you've heard me say record of decision is the end of the preliminary design phase. This funding for the $4.4 million in this federal fiscal year and $10 million next year is really to keep the project going forward, to get us to design approval. At this stage, if we choose to do a design build contract, we can proceed right to the construction phases after we get that. So this is really the funding necessary to carry the project forward to the next phases.
Thank you, Mark. One thing I want to reemphasize that Mark hit upon is that this additional money that's being added to the TIP for this year and next fiscal year in no way, shape, or form comes out of the competitive funds that the city, the county, and the other member agencies compete for. This is from New York State DOT's main office funding sources. So this is non-competitive monies that could have been allocated elsewhere. Just want to be very clear on that, that everyone knows that.
Great, thank you. So I'll ask for a motion in a second, and then once we receive those, Pat will go around again by agency. If you're the voting member of your agency, please offer an in favor or against. Could I have a motion to approve the tip amendment?
So moved. This is Rob Simpson.
Thanks, Rob. Second?
Odine will second.
Thanks, Odine.
Pat, do you want to do a roll call?
Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board. Thank you. Central New York Regional Transportation Authority.
Aye.
City of Syracuse Common Council.
Aye.
City of Syracuse Office of the Mayor.
Aye.
Empire State Development. Center State CEO.
Aye.
New York State DEC. New York State Department of Transportation.
Aye.
New York State Thruway Authority.
Aye.
Onondaga County Office of the Executive.
Aye.
Onondaga County Legislature.
Aye.
Thank you. Onondaga County Planning Board.
Yes.
City of Syracuse Planning Commission.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, everyone. With no other business, we're adjourned.
Well, we do have public comment, and we can open for that. We do have comment abilities that are on through our live stream. I have to ask Andrew Fraser, who's monitoring that, for public comment to provide if anything is there to be provided. Andrew.
Yes, so the YouTube stream operates at approximately a 20-second delay to what we are saying here. So I've just thrown out the notice that public comments are being accepted. So if we wait here about a minute or so, then we can potentially address them.
Anything coming through, Andrew?
Nope, we have no public comments related to that. There was a comment earlier that everything looked and sounded good, but nothing related to our to the amendment here. So,
Thank you very much, Andrew.
absolutely.
All right, Brian, I think it's up to you if you choose to adjourn.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Everyone, we're adjourned.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care.